everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to dive into a really fascinating concept called the diversity bonus, and we're going to challenge some of the biggest assumptions we have about what makes a great team tick. So think of this as our own little study group for PP 5361, Theory and Management of Public Service Organizations. We're going to be digging into the key ideas from the commentary on the required text, which is the diversity bonus, how great teams pay off in the knowledge economy. Ready to jump in?
You know, what's so interesting is that this conversation isn't new at all. I mean, way back in 1848, the philosopher John Stuart Mill said that putting people in contact with persons dissimilar to themselves is a primary source of progress. Now, he was talking about global trade, but that core idea, that difference is what fuels growth, that's exactly what we're talking about today, just inside our own teams.
All right, here's our game plan for this session. First, we'll nail down what the diversity bonus actually is. Then, we'll break down two really crucial types of diversity. After that, we'll uncover a super surprising psychological effect and tackle the big one, why this whole thing can feel so difficult. Then we'll get practical with a playbook for how to succeed, and we'll wrap it all up with a really powerful question that might just reframe the entire discussion for you.
So, what exactly is this diversity bonus? Well, we're looking at the work of a guy named Scott Page, who kind of flips the script on this whole conversation. He says, look, let's think about diversity less as a moral should and more as a functional strategic advantage. The real question is, when and how does it actually make teams better at what they do?
And this right here is the core idea. The diversity bonus isn't some magic bullet. It's the potential, and that's a key word, for a diverse team to do better than a team where everyone is the same, especially when the problem is complex and tricky. Page is super clear. This is not a guarantee. It's all about creating the right conditions to unlock that potential. Okay, now we're getting to what is, honestly, the absolute key to this entire concept. You have to understand this critical distinction between two different types of diversity. It changes everything. And the distinction is actually pretty simple, but it's so powerful. On one side, you've got cognitive diversity. You can think of this as what we know. It's all about our different skills, our perspectives, our mental models. On the other side, you have identity diversity. This is about who we are, our social backgrounds, things like race and gender, or even our role in a company, like being an engineer versus being in marketing. So let's zoom in on cognitive diversity for a second. The easiest way to think about it is like this. It's the total collection of mental tools that your team brings to a problem. It's the sum of all the unique knowledge, all the different problem-solving approaches, all the different ways of thinking that people have in their heads. Now, identity diversity, that's a bit different. It's all about the social categories that we use to sort ourselves and others. It creates the sense of an in-group, people who are like me, and an out-group, people who are different. This could be based on something you can see, like age or gender, or something less visible, like which department you work for. Okay, so this next part, this is where things get really, really interesting, and frankly, a little counterintuitive. We're going to talk about something called the identity diversity effect, and the amazing power of what researchers call mere presence. So identity diversity gives us a bonus in two really cool ways. First, pretty straightforward, people from different walks of life often bring different knowledge and perspectives, so it can be a good stand-in for cognitive diversity. But that second one, whoa, that's the real game changer. The mere presence of people who are different from us actually changes how every single person in the group behaves. So how in the world does that work? Well, think about it. When we're in a group where everyone is like us, our brains subconsciously expect everyone to agree. It feels easy, comfortable. But the second you're in a diverse group, you anticipate that there might be different viewpoints, maybe even some disagreement. And just that anticipation alone makes us all step up our game. We prepare more, we think more critically, and we put way more effort into making our case. And there's this incredible study on mock juries that just nails this point. A researcher named Samuel Summers found that white jurors who were placed on racially diverse juries just plain performed better than those on all-white juries. They brought up more new facts about the case, they made fewer mistakes, and they were just more careful in their discussions. The diversity of the group literally made them better jurors. So this leads to a huge, obvious question, right? If diversity is so effective, why does it often feel so difficult? Why is there so much resistance? Well, this brings us to what I call the paradox of performance versus perception. Here's the heart of it. There's often a massive disconnect between how effective a group feels and how well it actually does its job. The hard work, the friction, the process of challenging each other, the very things that lead to a better answer, don't always feel good. It can feel messy and slow and inefficient, even while it's making the group smarter.
Let's look at the actual data. When you look at performance, the results are pretty stark. In studies where groups had to solve a complex problem, the diverse groups were way more likely to get the right answer than the groups where everyone was the same.
But then, and here's the twist, you ask them how effective they felt, and the results completely flip on their head. The homogeneous groups, the ones that actually performed worse, were way more confident that they did a great job. And this disconnect is a huge barrier because we are all drawn to what feels smooth and easy, even if it's leading us straight to the wrong answer. So the big question is, if this all feels hard, but it works so well, how do we actually capture that bonus? How do we get the good stuff? Well, let's get practical and look at a 4-part playbook for creating the right environment for this to happen.
First up, congruence. This just means making sure people's roles line up with what they're expected to know. You want the marketing expert talking about marketing, right? Simple. Second, you need clear goals. The team has to have a single shared goal that absolutely requires everyone's unique input to achieve. Third, you've got to diminish status. You have to actively level the playing field so the best idea wins, no matter if it comes from the intern or the VP. And finally, and this is a big one, leadership support. This cannot be an afterthought. It needs real, visible buy-in from the top.
And that brings us to our final point. It's time to take a step back from all the data and the how-tos and ask a much bigger question, one that shifts the entire frame of this conversation. This quote from the commentary really just cuts right to the heart of it. The very idea that we have to make a business case for diversity implies something really deep. It assumes that diversity is the option you have to justify, and that homogeneity is the normal, accepted, default setting. And that leaves us with this final, critical question to chew on. Why is it that diversity is always the one that has to carry the burden of proof, to constantly prove its value, while having a team where everyone is the same is just accepted as the default, no questions asked? Thinking about that doesn't just change the conversation, it kind of changes everything. Thanks so much for joining this study session.